There are over 500,000 kids in foster care across the United States, and making sure they're well taken care of takes a village. I'm Erin Lindstrom, and this is Foster Care Aware, a production brought to you by Tidewater Friends of Foster Care with support from the Barry Robinson Center. If you've had it on your heart to become a foster parent, volunteer, donor, advocate, or just want to learn more, you're in the right place. For more information on how to move forward, head to fostercareaware.org/next steps. And now I'm thrilled to share today's segment with you. Hey, I'm Erin Lindstrom, and I am joined by Audra Bullock, the President and Director of Tidewater Friends of Foster Care. And with us today is Lauren Tremper, the Founder and Director of Entrusted Network, and Melissa Corkum from the Adoption Connection. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited. So Lauren, you have the Entrusted conference coming up, and I know Melissa is speaking there. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And we'll go from there.
Sure. The Entrusted conference is put on every November by the Entrusted Network, and it is specifically geared for foster and adopt parents, for people who work in the field of foster care adoption, and or anybody who wants to learn more about how they can engage with that. So if you want to get your church involved with caring for people, or you're interested in maybe becoming a foster family or an adopt family, this would be a good place for you to come and learn more information. So every year we bring in people locally and from across the US to share their expertise with us. And recently I was at the Field Retreat, which is a foster and adopt moms retreat put on by Jamie Finn and Foster the Family. And Melissa was there presenting on a myriad of things. And I'm pretty sure I tried to hit every single one of her sessions, because the first one I went to spoke so deeply to where I personally am at the time in my adoption journey. I have 3 biological kids and 2 kids adopted from foster care. And Melissa is an adoptee. She is also an adoptive parent with her husband, Patrick. They have 6 kids by birth and adoption, ranging in ages from 13 to 22. And she is basically a guru of everything I would want to know about. So I come to find out she could talk to you about Enneagram all day. She will be doing that for the Entrusted conference for the first time ever. We're going to run a pre-conference during the day on Friday before our conference kicks off. And Melissa is going to run that, talking about Enneagram and parenting. So she can talk to us about Enneagram. She's an essential oils guru, an adoptive parent. She can speak to all different aspects of that. So we're really excited to have her on the main stage at the Entrusted conference, leading breakout sessions and leading that pre-conference. So as a small taste of what you might hear, the types of material, the content you might hear at our conference in November, I wanted to have Melissa come and do this webinar with us and just share just a little bit of what's going on in her world.
Amazing. Well, Melissa, thank you for joining us for Foster Care Aware. We're really glad to have you here.
Yeah, you guys are doing amazing work. I'm excited to be a part of this.
Yay! Can you tell us a little bit about Adoption Connection, and tell us a little bit about your story? How did you get here?
Yeah, how did I get here? So the short version is we thought we were amazing parents after raising 2 kids by birth. And by raising, I mean we got them to the ripe ages of like 3 and 5. And we thought we're awesome. So anyway, we adopted a little guy from Korea in 2009. He came to us at 2.5 and really just rocked our world. Everything we thought we knew about parenting, we had to trash. So that put us on this path to really relearn everything we knew about parenting. So my husband, Patrick, and I went to Texas. We got trained as Empowered to Connect parent trainers with Karen Purvis, and then also thought that we had it all together and went ahead and adopted 3 kids out of birth order from Ethiopia in 2012. And they came to us at 11, 13, and 14. So we also have we've adopted teens, which I feel like is kind of the smaller section of the foster care and adoption world. And again, got knocked on our butts and realized that we really didn't know what we didn't know. And all of that led to some really hard things for our family. And we realized that there just wasn't the kind of support that families needed who had kids with really big attachment challenges, really big behaviors, really big feelings that they didn't know what to do with, who didn't have a history of care and nurture and all of those things. And so about 2.5 years ago, I paired up with Lisa Qualls, and she's a well-known adoption blogger and is the co-author of a book called The Connected Parent, which is the sequel to The Connected Child that Dr. Karen Purvis wrote. And so she was able to write that with Dr. Purvis and mostly finish it before Dr. Purvis passed away. And so that book releases in July. And so we paired up just to bring the world those post-placement resources for families, again, that we wish we had had. She also has walked some pretty tough roads with some of her kids. And so we have a podcast and a resource site and a couple of courses. We're both certified Enneagram coaches as well. And so really trying to help layer on as many resources to parents as we possibly can to just give them more tools for, navigating all the tricky dynamics of their families.
Amazing. Amazing. One of the things I think, as I'm an adoptive parent as well, you're not prepared, right? There are a lot of challenges. And one of the things that you say is parents shouldn't feel guilty about running out of compassion. What does that mean?
So I remember when our daughter was really, really struggling, and I got to the point where I just kind of I almost didn't care. It either hurt too much to care or I was too tired. We got to the point where we needed out-of-home treatment for her. And I just remember feeling so guilty and feeling like I was such a bad parent for failing. I felt like I'd failed her. And then I felt guilty for not caring. I mean, it was just this terrible cycle of emotions. And reading, adoption books and blogs and things, Lisa and I recently came across some of Dan Hughes's work on blocked care. And what we realized was, our nervous systems, just like we give grace to our kids for some of their struggles because we know that they've been hurt in relationship, it makes so much sense. But then we had never flipped the coin for us as parents. We are in relationships with our kids that aren't exactly the way that our nervous system was designed to be in relationship. And so when that happens, we have subconscious self-protective mechanisms that go into place. And so first of all, like Dan Siegel says, name it to tame it. First of all, having a name for all of that guilt and, those feelings of apathy that we had experienced was really, really helpful, because I feel like once it has a name, that you're not the only one, right? You're not crazy. Someone has discovered it, figured it out, named it. But also, again, going back to the brain science of it and just that subconscious self-protective mechanism, it wasn't our fault as moms, that we had kind of reached this wall or that our compassion had kind of run out.
So when you say the term blocked care, is that what you mean? Kind of that feeling of oops, the compassion well is dry right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of we talk a lot about, protective walls around our hearts in other situations. So it's kind of like your nervous system is interacting with someone, in this case, a child, who isn't reciprocating relationship in quite the way that we would expect. And when that happens, our nervous system's that doesn't really feel great. And so it starts putting walls up to protect us. And that can, it's kind of like we are still doing the mechanical acts of parenting, right? We're still getting up every day. We're still putting food on the table, driving back and forth to school, whatever those things are, right? But it's like our heart isn't in it anymore. And so that's kind of the best experience or description I think I can give of blocked care.
So what are the practical ways that we can regain compassion for our children and help them as well?
So just like we talk about what's broken in relationship heals in relationship, it's the same thing for us as moms. And so because we're not getting the same kind of reciprocation that we would expect from our kids, what we need, right? We are pouring out into them all this nurture to help them heal from a lot of their experiences in their past. And so basically we need someone to pour into us. We need someone to be nurturing us, and not kind of in this kind of typical self-care way. I mean, all the things that we talk about in self-care are very, very valid. But this is a more intentional way where someone who really understands why we're feeling the way that we're feeling can kind of speak into us, encourage us. And then there are some really practical things that we can do kind of day to day to, again, help fill our buckets up, but then also pour into the relationship with our child. It's never too late, as broken as you think the relationship is between you and your child. Lisa and I have been through some pretty terrible stuff, and we've gotten to the other side. And so we always like to encourage families to know that it's really never too late. And what's currently feels like will be forever, right? Whatever current state you are with your child, and you think, this is just the way it's going to be. It's not always. So we do have a free training on this, and then also a course, a 30-day course people can take that kind of teaches them how to get that nurture piece back, how to regain compassion, both for their children, but also for themselves, because that guilt and shame really can be harmful for our own kind of self-identity as moms.
Right.
My husband and I often talk about running out of bandwidth, right? This concept of we've got nothing left to give. We put it all on the mat, but there are these people, these little people that are in our family now that constantly need more. So I think that's an incredible resource for families. I think another point is helping us to realize when we are running out of that bandwidth, when we are running out of that compassion. In my household, I know it looks like we start snapping at each other, and all of a sudden where it's like one of us is raising our hand, like, I think you need to take a little time to get, some juice back in the tank. So I'm really excited about these. Can you give us just one example of how we rebuild compassion?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I think is really powerful is story, right? And all of us get into adoption and foster care for very noble reasons. And a lot of us came in with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot more energy than maybe where we are now, if we're in this, we've been in this now for over a decade. So one of our most favorite exercises that we have parents do is go back and find either the first picture that you saw of your child, or maybe the first picture that you have of you and your child together, and let all of those memories and emotions, usually positive ones, right, come flooding back. Like, what were you thinking when you saw that face for the first time? And what made you think we can do this? Usually we have a ton of compassion at that point in the journey when we're looking at that. We're thinking about all the possibilities, right? All the opportunities, all the love that we have. And so even just reminding ourselves where we've come from and kind of why we got into it in the first place is a really good place to start before you start on this, 30-day journey of regaining compassion for yourself and your child.
That sounds so similar to the concept of a life book for a foster child, right? That's something they put together that gives them a narrative of time in their life that they can reflect back on and have connection to. I love that. I love that.
And we'll tell parents, like, make it the wallpaper on your phone. Like, give yourself a visual reminder to kind of recharge your battery. Like when you get up in the morning and you're like, I don't know if I can do another day. Take yourself back to that moment as often as you need to.
Really like reconnecting with the why, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Kind of like grounding into that. One of the things I love about this conversation is talking about the hard moments, right? And like when you feel like your battery is low and like, oh goodness, I also need to charge up other people and take care of them. And there's typically like a lot of shame around that. I think mothers feel no matter what, whether they're adoptive, foster, biological, like it's just a negative thing, or it seems like a negative thing when you're not crushing it every day, right? Like the media will show you how you're supposed to do it. So I think it's really important, A, to normalize this, and then B, to actually redefine what success means, because success isn't about it never being hard, right?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is something so I do some private coaching with families outside of the Adoption Connection. I have a blog and a Facebook group, and whenever I'm working with families, we always start with this foundation of defining success. And I found that this really is a mindset shift that radically changes how one parent, right? It helps us decide which hills to die on and which hills not to die on, because we can't battle them all. We can't battle all the battles. And also helping us not feel like failures, right? If we always define as foster parents that we'll never have to say no to a placement, or we'll never have to ask for a child to be moved, right? And then we get something, a situation, we get a child who the dynamics are just not right, or you have other kids that you need to keep safe in your house and you need to ask for extra support. And then all of a sudden you feel like I'm the failure because I couldn't do that thing. Or even if we just define success as our kids' behaviors, right, which I think is really common, it feels like our kids are little reflections of us all over, that society is judging us based on how our kids are behaving. And I know that I was in that trap for years, especially with our first two kids. But, when we have kids from hard places who have experienced a lot of life before they've come to us, they're having big behaviors over things that we had nothing to do with. And so we can't define our success by how our kids behave. I also falsely believed when I came into this and started relearning parenting, and, Dr. Purvis explained how behavior was communication and how we had all this power as parents to help our kids heal. I kind of took it a little too far, right? And I thought that because we have the power to help our kids heal, that if my kids' behaviors weren't changing, then I was to blame, like that I hadn't inputted enough nurture, inputted enough time, inputted enough connection for that to happen. And I think that can be a really dangerous trap too, because I think it's like a hamster wheel. It's our kids sometimes are like black holes, and we can pour ourselves out in the name of getting them to a place of healing. And really it's not up to us, and we don't have that much control. We do have a lot of influence, and we have a lot of tools that we can use, but to let our kids experience, to find our own success as parents can be really, really dangerous for us and our own, again, back to our own self-identity as parents.
Right. So then what would you say is a healthy way to define success for parents?
So I always say that success should be defined by something that you can control, right? So we can commit to offering relationship and connection to our kids, for example, and that's the end of our responsibility. Whether or not they receive it or reject it and how they behave in light of that is not on us. Right? We just have to keep showing up every day. So, doing things like our course From Apathy to Empathy to help you keep showing up, that's something that you can do. It's action-based. It's not outcome-based, right? And so I have a kind of a mini course as well that folks can take around this idea of success to help them kind of redefine what that looks like. And then, like I said, again, it helps us, know whether we should be fighting battles about screen time or food or schoolwork or homework. Every family's definition of success is going to be different, but at least then, because you're starting from the same foundation, then you'll know which things you want to, put your energy towards.
Right. That makes sense. So it sounds like for anyone who's coming to this, it really takes some introspection into what do you need to feel good? How can you be supported as a human first? And then so you can pour out into your children. And then that it's not so much determined by the outcomes or what you're seeing on a day-to-day basis. It's more the fact that you're showing up consistently with your heart as much as possible in any given day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll give you just a kind of a simple example for our son who we homeschool. And he's been fetal alcohol affected. So he has some learning disabilities and things. And so if I think we're tempted in academics to define success that our kids are learning something, right? Which again is great, but not totally in my control, especially when I'm working with a child who has defined special needs. And so I had to take a step back and say, we're homeschooling him because we want to give him a safe, nurturing environment, right? That's not riddled with too much peer pressure. There's a good reason why he's not in public school right now, because he's 13 but not anywhere near there, right? Socially or emotionally. And so when I'm working, going through his schoolwork and kind of checking it and getting really, really frustrated that we're going to have to do the same math paper, 17 times or go back and correct something. And I can get really, really frustrated with him. But if I go back to this definition of success, that homeschooling for us is really just about providing him a safe environment. The learning's kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bonus.
The cherry on top, right? Then I can kind of let go of some of that. I can say, we're not going to correct this math paper this time. Maybe I'll just put it back in the rotation for another day. Or, I don't have to fight that battle. I don't feel guilty that we're not getting fractions or we can't remember what an octagon is and things like that. Right. I can just think, did we provide him a safe place today? And that doesn't require, all of that other academic learning. And then that takes a lot of pressure off of me, and it takes a lot of pressure off of him.
Amazing. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Melissa. If people are interested in learning more, you mentioned the course and a free guide. Can you tell us where should they go to take that next step?
Yeah, absolutely. So I created a couple pages just for your folks to keep it simple. So the Compassion Challenge is a free training on blocked care, and that's something we do through the Adoption Connection. And so folks can go to theadoptionconnection.com/foster care aware, just kind of like type all the letters out, no dashes, spaces, anything like that. And that will take you to a page where you can just go through that training on demand for free. And then if you really want to explore this idea of defining success for your family in a little bit more depth, then you can go to my website, thecorkboardonline.com/fostercareaware, and go through that mini training as well.
Thank you so much for doing that for our audience. I think this is a wealth of resource for people that are already foster parents, as well as people that are thinking about foster care. I think the concept of you don't have to be a perfect parent to come to the table and make the world completely different for a child. And surviving that means letting go of that guilt, that pressure on yourself. And I think that the children will be better for it as well, like you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you guys are doing in terms of raising awareness is super, super important. And so as the Adoption Connection, and myself included, we want to be there on the post-placement side as people get in so that they can be successful and sustainable foster care resources into the future.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Melissa, for being here. And if you want more from Melissa, absolutely check on those websites you mentioned. And of course, she will be at the Entrusted conference later this year. So check that out as well.
Great. You can find out more information about the Entrusted conference, the dates, the location. I'll be in Norfolk, Virginia, and other presenters that we have coming. More details are being added. I would say daily in this time right now, maybe weekly, but details are being added, so check back every now and then, but that's just entrustednetwork.com. So you can see more about her and what we're going to be offering that weekend at that website.
Amazing. Well, thank you both for joining us. This has been excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
And a big thank you for listening. Foster Care Aware is all about spreading the word about how we can help the kids who are in care in whatever capacity works for you. Tidewater Friends of Foster Care is here to help support you through the journey. Whether you want to be a foster parent, volunteer, donor, or advocate, head on over to fostercareaware.org/nextsteps to learn more.